Hey everyone, welcome back to another design tutorial in Adobe Xd, and today we will be designing this cool web design, and we will further be exporting it to Behance to create a cool Behance project. So again, if I click here, as you can see, this thing animates pretty properly and it looks good. I've added these clouds to give it a bit of realism, and there is a little bit of depth as well to the design because of these clouds. Sometimes if your design ends up boring, you want to add some assets to the design just for the sake of the design, and that is what I've done here. And how I've achieved these clouds is very simple. I went into Photoshop, and in Photoshop I picked up the paint tool, which is here, and from here I closed these general brushes, and I've downloaded these cloud brushes from right here, and there are multiple of these. So for example, I want a fluffy cloud, so I'll click on this, and then I will create a new layer here. It's called layer 1, and I will start drawing on this like this. Again, this cloud is black, but you can make this white if you click here, and if you just make this white, you can do that as well. And you can make it slightly lighter, change the modes, change the opacity to make it a little more cloud-like, just like this. And then you can go ahead and export it as an SVG, and that is what I've done. If I export as and just say as an SVG, I can do that. And to remove the background, I just make this layer remove the opacity to 0. So I'll just bring the opacity of this layer to 0, and that's how you get these awesome custom clouds. Without further ado, let's get started with the actual web design. So let's first create an artboard, and this artboard is going to be the our original 1920 by 1080 artboard. I'm going to just say home, right, just for the sake of it. And here I am going to I've added some of the assets and the colors that are required for this project right here. And what I'm going to do is I'll first start creating the background layers. So for this, I will create first of all a simple rectangle which covers the entire area, and I will remove the border, of course. And for this one, I will give this green, this grass green that I'm calling it here. And I'll either click on Y, the letter Y, or this polygon tool from the left, and I will create a basic triangle. Now what I'm going to do is first of all place this in the center. Perfect. And I will change the number of sides from the appearance panel here. So rather than 3, I'll say 8, and just go ahead and click enter. And for the radius, the border radius, I'll say 50 for this one. Perfect. And I'll make sure that this is quite big, and I will place this in the center again, and I will select this shape and the background color together, and I will go to the panel on the right, and on the top I have this option which says subtract. I'll click on this subtract, and you have a layer with a hole in the middle. Now how do I know this is a hole? If I bring the shadow, if I activate shadow here, and I say 48 by 48, I guess, as you can see, there is inner shadow in the shape as well, because this is now one whole solid component. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this. I'll increase it from 48, I'll increase it to 80, and I'll give the shadow as the same color as this darkest green. Perfect. And I'll reduce the opacity to about 50%. Perfect. And the next layer will again be a rectangle, and for this layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this slightly olive or a slightly darker grass green. And again, with the shape, I will create the same shape with 8 sides, and border radius is 50. But this time this one is going to be much smaller than what we had before. And again, I will be subtracting this from this green background, so select both, and go to the subtract and click on subtract. I'm going to place it behind this, something like this. Now what I'm going to do with this layer which is behind this, make sure that you've selected the layer behind this, and I'll remove the borders first of all, and I'll put a shadow to this as well. So here I'm going to say 48 by 80, right, so that it spreads more. And I want this to be again the same dark green that we had, which will be, let me go back to my assets panel, and here I will give this the same super dark green, and I will give this an opacity of about 50 again. So this step is done. The last step of the background involves creating another rectangle and just changing the border and reducing the border and changing the background color to this darkest green that we have saved, and put it at the back. Perfect. Doesn't this look cool already? To make it look slightly cooler, what I'm going to do is, for the topmost, I will change this from a fill to a linear gradient. And for this color, we'll go with whatever Adobe has set the color for us. And it gives us a little more depth on the page as well. And one more thing that I would like to do is now that this is more or less set, what I'm going to do is now start placing the text. First of all, we'll place the center text which says jungle. Instead of jungle, you can say anything you like. So it could be your name, it could be anything, and you can play around with this. I have created a jungle theme, but you can create your own portfolio with this as well, whatever you want to do. So for the font, I found this cool font which is not related to a jungle, but it was cool anyway. So it's called Youth Touch, and this is just the demo version for this, not the complete font, but for our title this was more than enough. And I'll be placing this jungle in the center once I have a large enough jungle, of course. The font size here I'm using is about 250 pixels, or 240 points in this case. And I'll place it in the center and make sure that this is right at the back, because now what we're going to do is make sure that we're going to increase the shadow of this inner hexagon and overlay the shadow over the text. How we do that is increase the Y from 48 to about, let's say, 80, and keep increasing it until it starts to overlay this text as well. So 100, we go to 150, and as you can see, there's a little bit of shadow coming on the top right here. So keep going, 150 to 180. We can do 250. See now how the shadow is covering here, and you can increase the opacity of the shadow from 50 to 70 to give it a little more depth. So you know that this jungle is at the back and it's not floating on top like that. So that is one way. Also, another way is to reduce the opacity, which is not the ideal way to do this. So I'm just going to increase the opacity back to 100. Now comes the leading text. I'm calling it the leading text, which I've somehow come up after studying photography for a couple of years back in the day, and there was a concept called leading lines. So generally what the user does is he reads from the left to right. So we're going to use that principle. We're going to put this to play here. So here I'm going to say, welcome to the jungle. I'm just going to remove jungle, of course. Rather than using this font, we're just going to use another font. For this one, I'll say IBM Plex Sans, not Mono. And again, all these assets and everything I will be linking in the description as an XD file. I'll give the XD file down in the description as well. Reduce the size to about 60. And welcome to the jungle. And we'll make the come overlap this hexagon a little bit. And the trick is comes now, and basically I'll just duplicate this and put it here for now, and I'll use the pen tool just to create a box around this, but make sure that it touches this edge of the hexagon, just like this. And I'll just create a random box. It doesn't have to be like even or anything. and I will mask this. So I'll select both and say Command Shift M or Control Shift M for Windows, and as you can see I've hidden welcome to, and there's only welcome to the now, and just a little bit of the as well. So I'll make sure that this the is in line, right, just like that. Just make sure, yeah, and I'll place this text below this. So now the shadow makes it seem that it's below this, and if you want to give a little more depth, you can always increase the shadow of this topmost layer from 48 of the opacity to from 50 to about 70. This will give a little more differentiation, so you know there's a little bit of depth, and the HE, half of the HE is going at the bottom. You can reduce the opacity of this as well, just to give it a little extra of that effect. So welcome to the jungle, and after jungle I want to say explore, right? So I'll just create another text and I'll say explore, and I want this to be the same size as this, so make sure that this is the same font size. This is 60 and this should be 60 as well. That is absolutely perfect. Now what I want to do is just line it up just like this and bring half of the E like that, or you can do half of the X, whatever you like, you know. You can do half of the X, you can do half of the E, whatever suits you. Make sure that there are the similar distance from the inner hexagon, something like this, right? And I'll duplicate this explore and I will cut it out with the pen, right? So I'll create another stencil right here and I will cut it out with the pen just like that. Perfect. And I'll say Command Shift M or Control Shift M to mask it like this. So as you can see, only half of the X will be on top and half of it will be at the bottom. Just line it up with the original text just like this and place it behind this under the hexagon like this, and reduce the opacity a little bit too, so it looks as if it's actually under that hexagon. So welcome to the jungle, explore. And I will bring in this arrow PNG or this arrow SVG from my downloads folder. I've already downloaded it, and I just want to bring this arrow right here. Perfect. And this arrow is a little small, so I'll first of all make this a white arrow from here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase this length. So if you have an SVG, you can probably fidget with that SVG inside Adobe Xd as well. So that's a cool trick that you can do in Adobe Xd. And this particular arrow I have downloaded from Feather Icon Pack. I will link that down in the description. So now that we have welcome to the jungle, explore, we just want to add the clouds now, and that'll add the finishing touch to this welcome screen or this landing screen. So once I have saved the clouds, let me show you where I've saved it. So now I have saved these clouds as Untitled 2 from Photoshop, of course. I'll just bring it right here. Now the cool thing about Photoshop is that you can actually, if you save this as a Photoshop file, and for example I'll open the actual clouds that I had created, they're called 35. The cool thing about Photoshop is if I save this as a PSD and I click on maximize compatibility, I can save this, and so if I try to bring in that PSD, I can do that in Adobe Xd, but for that what I have to do is go to File, go to Open, and from your computer I want to go to Creative Cloud where it's saved that, and click on this untitled version and just say Open. And it'll take a couple of seconds, but Adobe Xd can open Photoshop files. So if you have a cloud image in Photoshop, you can import it here, and it'll import as a flat image, unfortunately, but that is how Adobe Xd finds a workaround for this. So you can just copy and paste into here just like that. Again, we'll not be using these clouds, we'll be using the clouds that I was using before, these ones. Okay, so I've quickly skipped to the portion where I've placed all these clouds. These clouds are again PNG, so you can't really fiddle with their shapes, but they're there and they look really good. I've given them a little bit of subtle shadow so that it seems as if they are actually floating on top, and that is how you do it. And for the next screen, what we're going to do is we're just going to duplicate this, and for the second screen I want to first of all scatter these clouds. I'll place these clouds at certain positions on the top and some on the right side, and just make sure that these clouds are scattered all over, and some are towards the bottom as well. So just to make sure that everything is, and here we're not following any sort of consistency. They're clouds, so they won't be consistent, but the UI is going to be consistent. That is something that I would like to point out. And now for this step, what we're going to do is double click here, go to the assets panel, and here, as you can see, each of these subtractions already have their polygons here. So all I need to do is just select these polygons from here, just increase the size like this. Or a better way to do this, if you're going to do this from the left and the right, just click on this left anchor point here, hold shift and just pull it to the left. As you can see, it evenly gets distributed like that. So we just want it to be till say this point. That's perfect. And on the other side I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to move out everything from here. Perfect. And I'm going to do that for the inner rectangle as well. Choose the subtraction, open it, click on the polygon, and just shift it out like this. Again, I want this to be just up till here, so I have a little bit of depth left here as well, and just move it towards the end like this. Perfect. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold all these extra text on the left and the right, and what I'm going to do is, first of all, on the ones on the left, I'm just going to move outside so that it moves uniformly with the actual with the actual layer on the top. So just like that, I'm going to say command comma or control comma for you Windows users, and just hide it just like that. I'm going to do the same for the right ones. I'm not going to move them away from the artboard, just enough that they're almost exited, and I'll say command comma or control comma to hide them. And this jungle, what I'm going to do with this jungle is reduce the opacity to about 50 and decrease it by half. So what I'm going to do is, here I can just click on the font size here just like that and say divided by 2, so like //2, and it'll divide the font size by 2. And I want this to be in the center, of course, and I'll bring it towards the top, so a little under this cloud that we have here. Perfect. And the exact dimension for this would be, oops, where's the font? We have jungle here. I want this to be about 100 about 50 pixels from the top. Perfect. And here also we want this to be wide enough to fit about the icons that we're going to place. So for the icons, I have everything inside this one component that I've saved. Again, I will link the Adobe Xd file in the description so that you guys can follow along. And I'll place this in the center just like that, and I'll make sure that this is vertically centered as well. Perfect. Now we have these options which say home, clips, help, and more. They're not taking too much of our focus from our actual data, and they're still there. Now you can go ahead and place whatever you want. I'm going to skip and just place my data here. So for my design, I've just placed some hexagons with my social media and some images just to showcase the jungle and this text, which is coming out pretty well, which is left justified, by the way. Since our text has always been left justified, we like to keep it that way. And also, one more thing that I've done is for the navigation, I've given us a little indicator below. Whenever you click here, you will get this indicator, because indicators are very crucial if you want to highlight something or want to make sure that it is differentiated from everything else. Now, as promised, there's a cool new plugin that Adobe has introduced themselves, and it is called the Behance plugin. So if you go to BBB, so Behance plugin, it's pretty cool. If I click on any one of these artboards and I say Behance, and I choose which profile I want, and I say continue, and it allows me to place to upload a story as a 9:16 aspect ratio, and we can post to Behance whatever we are working on. So it's a great way to connect with other designers as well as your subscribers, and you can go ahead and post to Behance, and it'll do this automatically from inside Adobe Xd. Now this is one of the coolest and my favorite feature on this for this month, and this is a really cool plugin. It does take a couple of seconds, but if you have a couple of seconds, then you can go ahead and upload it from right here inside. Unfortunately, you can't edit the story in any way, and your work in progress is live, and it shows that link here. So if you want, you can share, or you can just go to Behance and actually view the story. So now it's taking me straight to Behance, and I should be able to see the story using this link. So it's taken me here to my page, and it's opened the story for me. Now how cool can this get? And as you will be able to see this on my Behance story, so go ahead and follow me on Behance. I'll have the link in the description, and you can see how it has come. That was it for today. I hope you liked this video. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and also click that bell icon right next to the subscribe button. I post every Monday and Thursday, so stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys in the next video. God bless.